Today, our story introduces us to Sushiel, a delightful and energetic young woman well known by all residents of the rural village of Fogo. She's always running around, helping everyone as if she were the village's official heroine, always arriving with a smile and a solution, a charismatic lifesaver. But Sushiel's life isn't as easy as she makes it seem. Almost her entire family is gone, and the only person left is her uncle. And to make matters worse, it's not her uncle taking care of her, it's her taking care of him, paying for everything and holding things together as if she were the responsible adult of the house. Her uncle works at the family shop, but he seems to have a rare talent for ruining the business. When Sushiel wakes up and finds him sleeping as if life were an eternal holiday, she tries to bring order to the chaos and insists he get up and work. He, completely at ease, dismisses her and even tries to push the responsibility onto her. Then he provokes Sushiel and challenges her to a game of rock, paper, scissors with a simple rule. Whoever loses has to deliver the day's pig. But Sushiel is innocent, and the cunning uncle finds a way to cheat. As a result, she falls for it, hook, line, and sinker. It's exactly at this moment that a handsome and charismatic young man, the protagonist Linz, appears in the village. He arrives in an elegant car, in a place where everyone knows everyone, and the question hangs in the air: what is someone like that doing in the middle of the countryside? It soon becomes clear that Linz is hiding a secret. He fled the city because he was tired of the fame of being an actor and the constant spotlight on him. He just wanted some peace in this quiet place, but the universe decides to test his patience from the very first minute. The path is blocked by farm animals, so he gets out of the car and decides to continue on foot. With headphones on, he walks through the fields admiring nature as if he had just discovered this way of life. Sushiel sees him passing by and freezes, thinking he's gonna step on and ruin the soil she just irrigated. He runs towards him, tries to stop him and demand an explanation, but he doesn't even notice because he's lost in his own world with his headphones on. Sushiel tries to take his headphones off and ends up falling to the ground. She gets furious because besides the fall, he doesn't care at all but prioritizes the broken ribbon, as if that were the most important thing on the planet Edo. Shail introduces herself and demands some manners, and Linza retorts in his arrogant way, making it clear that he doesn't want to talk and that she shouldn't interfere. But Shakil remembers she's late for school and runs off like a rocket because her life waits for no one, much less a star lost in the woods. When she arrives at school, the bad luck continues. She shows up late and sees her friend Fang jumping over the wall in an acrobatic way, so she goes with him. This has become routine because her friend Jay, who organizes the assembly, always finds a way to sneak them inside just to avoid a lecture and punishment. In the classroom, the teacher is harsh with Xiao and humiliates her because of her grades, saying she's a failure and that her performance is very low. Xiao, dying of embarrassment, tries to explain that she doesn't have time to study because she works all day helping others as if she were a favor-giving machine. But the teacher doesn't buy the story and reinforces that studying is her responsibility, regardless of everything else. And then, right at that moment, Linz appears at the classroom door, arriving with that energy of a protagonist who's arrived late to his own drama. The teacher asks him to introduce himself, and he states his name firmly. The girls in the class practically have a collective meltdown because he's too handsome for school hours, and the teacher tells him to sit down. Yes, but the only empty seat is right next to Sushiel. She gets irritated, makes it clear she doesn't want him there, but the teacher tells her to stop causing trouble and accepts that he sits down. Sushiel becomes furious and decides that their coexistence will be a war. She makes it clear that she doesn't want friendship and promises to torment him whenever she can. Lindsay, on the other hand, acts as if she doesn't even exist. This only fuels his desire to provoke her. Then he notices a small piglet inside her bag. Yes, a piglet. Lindsay brazenly opens the bag and exposes the animal to the class. The teacher becomes furious and punishes Sushiel. Afterwards, Sushiel tries to play innocent before talking to the teacher, but Lindsay is nearby and sees through the charade. He reveals the situation, and her plan crumbles, with the teacher showing no mercy. Sushiel explodes with anger, considers him a declared enemy, and leaves with Fang and Yanu, vowing to get revenge in the most dramatic way possible. Linz remains cold, as if the whole storm was just a breeze. To make matters worse, he even calls the teacher and reports Sushiel and her friends. As a result, the three are punished on the spot, forced to do exhausting exercises and apologize to the entire class until they are worn out, as if they had run a marathon out of sheer stubbornness. Later, when Sushiel returns home, she hears a strange noise and becomes alarmed. Since she had seen her uncle at the shop, she thinks someone broke into the house, but when she gets closer, she discovers that the intruder is Linz. Her uncle appears and explains Linz had rented the downstairs room. Sushiel is outraged and orders her uncle to kick him out immediately because of everything that happened earlier. But her uncle mentions the rent $, and Sushiel changes her mind in the blink of an eye. She swallows her pride, forgives everything, and agrees to live with him because of the money. Linz doesn't get involved in the argument. He just goes to sleep, although he clearly isn't getting proper rest. Then the story reveals his past. Linz was a famous actor on the verge of becoming a superstar, but a nasty scandal and an unfortunate accident shattered his spirits. He couldn't continue acting, and the entertainment company put him on a long break and suggested he travel until he recovered. But life in the countryside is anything but easy for him. The people are noisy, and the village chief wakes everyone up with a microphone to announce anything from a lost duck to a useless message, and Sushiel can't get used to Linz being at home either. Every time she bumps into him, she screams, and it becomes a free show for the whole village. Even at breakfast, she forgets he's there, but her uncle forces her to serve him food. At the table, Sushiel tells him to eat, and Lindsay interprets it all as a provocation, thinking she's staring at him too much. Sushiel says she already knows his secret. Lindsay panics, thinking she knows details of the scandals, but in reality, she only knows that he was once famous and ran away from the city. He begs her not to tell anyone, and Sushiel promises to keep it a secret like it's buried deep in a well. But 5 minutes later, the village chief announces Lindsay's name over the microphone and confirms he'll be attending the fire school. Linz immediately understands that Sushiel has spread the truth. He confronts her, and Sushiel gives a mocking excuse, as if she'd forgotten the well has no lid, proudly stating that she can't hide anything from her community. When Lindsay arrives at the school, the students are already waiting for his autograph. He's not at peace with the crowd, so he agrees to only sign if everyone agrees to have dinner at Sushiel's house that night. The group gets excited and tells Sushiel they're going to invade her house. Linz takes advantage of the commotion to disappear and rest in the bathroom, finally catching his breath. Meanwhile, his friend Yui texts him asking when Lindy is coming back to town. Lindsay doesn't reply, leaving everything up in the air. Sushiel is exhausted from being harassed by her colleagues as if she were the idol's assistant, and begins to regret speaking up. She and her friends decide to get revenge on Lindsay for everything since he arrived. So she tricks him, telling him she's going to show him a very important place, the best spot in the village. Linz, lost like a tourist without internet, believes her and goes. Sushiel takes him to a field full of older women and tells them that Lindsay wants to volunteer and work with them. Lindsay is shocked, but before he can react, the women have already dressed him in work clothes and told him to start. Lindsay gets angry with Sushiel and thinks about retaliating, but the women keep calling him and won't let him escape. Sushiel even feels remorse and starts working too. When his friends find out, they join in and it becomes a community effort, almost a community party. In the end, Lindsay discovers that the work wasn't free, there was payment, and Sushiel had orchestrated everything to keep the money, and when he demands payment, she defends herself, saying that she already cooks and feeds him, so he should earn his own food. Lindsay pretends not to care about the money, but it's clear his patience has limits. Sushiel loses her temper and says he shouldn't act superior because she knows he didn't leave the company by choice but because of rumors. This hits a nerve with Lindsay. She pushes him further, insinuating that he's afraid the village will find out he's not so innocent. Then Lindsay finally explains what really happened. He didn't do anything wrong. The rumors were malicious lies. He recounts that he went to dinner with a coworker to meet a famous producer, and this producer tried to do something very wrong to his coworker. Lindsay defended her, exposed the producer publicly, and because of that, the rumors started. After that day, his life fell apart and the lies spread quickly. Sushiel is shocked, feels guilty for pressuring him, and sincerely apologizes. She acknowledges that he did the right thing and promises to respect him from then on. Lindsay finally feels relieved because someone believes his version of events. Encouraged by this trust, he calls his manager and says he doesn't intend to return to the city. He wants to stay in the village and build a new life. He sleeps more peacefully, but the next day he wakes up startled. Sushiel is sleeping right next to him. He quickly realizes she's been sleeping. He takes her out of the room and threatens to expose her at school, saying she tried to bother him. Sushiel panics, explains that she has this problem and can't control it. Lindsay feels bad and agrees not to say anything, but demands that she truly respect him. Xiao agrees, but in her own way, turning it into a truce with ulterior motives. When Lindsay's father calls to check on him, Xiao grabs the phone and runs off to spread rumors that he's not studying and is wasting his time. Lindsay takes the phone back and Xiao proposes a deal. No tricks on either side. Lindsay accepts and asks what the conditions are. So Xiao says he has to help her with accounting, and in exchange, she will officially introduce him to the residents. Lindsay accepts as if it were a silly game, but he throws himself headfirst into the mission. They begin carefully recording all the debts the residents have with Sushiel and Uncle. Lindsay also starts working part-time, delivering drinks and helping at the store when Uncle travels to buy things. Working together, they manage to save a good amount of money, and Sushiel is happy, especially with the money, because that's where she shines. Then Y calls again, asking when he's coming back to town. Lindsay says he gave up his idle life and wants to focus on his new life. Y laughs and says that music is in his blood and that he'll be back someday. Lindsay ignores him and hangs up. Then the boy appears running, saying that his grandmother needs urgent help. Lindsay asks who it is, and Sushiel explains that he's Jean's little brother and Grandma King's grandson, who is like a grandmother to her too. They rush to see what happened and discover that Jin doesn't want to tutor her younger brother. Sushiel, not missing a beat, suggests that Lindy tutor for $3. Grandma Ken loves the idea. Lindsay tries to refuse, but Xiao threatens to call his father and tell him everything, so he ends up quietly accepting. And Xiao goes even further. She starts offering Lindsay as a tutor to several families, promising that the children will become the best students, and even takes advantage of his singing talent, getting the ladies together and making him put on a mini impromptu show. At the end of the day, she talks about splitting the money, and Lindsay gets excited like a child waiting for a gift. But she gives him $50 and says that's more than enough. Saga. And before he can celebrate, she tells him to give the money back so she can buy his breakfast. Lindsay is shocked by her audacity and decides to get revenge. He grabs her notebook and throws it into the water, as if he were throwing a ball. Asael is devastated because that notebook was special. It had belonged to her grandmother. She doesn't make a scene, she just walks away crying, visibly. Later, Lindsay asks his friends what the notebook meant and discovers it was an emotional heirloom from his grandmother. He's filled with guilt and regret for hurting her when he finds out Sushiel went fishing. He goes after her to help and try to make amends. He sincerely apologizes, and Sushiel forgives him quickly because she has a good heart. They agree to stop fighting and become true friends, manombrens. Sushiel even invites him to eat grilled fish. Sitting together, Sushiel opens up and explains that since her parents never returned, she lived with her grandmother and worked hard her whole life. Later, the grandma died. She lived with her irresponsible uncle. Instead of her uncle taking care of her, she became the one who takes care of him, like a babysitter for an adult. Lindsay feels a lot of empathy for this difficult life. When Sushiel asks about his hobbies, he says he loves music and creating songs. She comments that nature there is full of sounds and that if he focuses, he can draw inspiration from everything. Lindsay tries and starts listening to the river, the animals, the wind, and feels his creativity surge. He records the sounds and uses them to create a melody. The result is great, and he realizes the subtlety was right. He continues recording more natural sounds, excited as if he had just unlocked a new level of creativity. When he finishes, he finds Sushiel inviting him to go to the beach with his friends, Urumarins. Lindy accepts, and the group goes along. They play, have fun, and Lini records beautiful images of the place. He sends the videos to Yu, who is impressed and decides to travel to see Lindsay and surprise him. Meanwhile, Sushiel is on the beach playing with sand when she sees a handsome boy in front of her. When she focuses better, she realizes it's Yu, the main actor from a drama she was watching. Sushiel gets very excited, tries to confirm if it's really him, and Yu realizes she recognized him. She shows complete admiration and Yu explains that he's filming a video on the beach. Xiao gets excited and decides to go along. Then she takes Yu and even Lind, and Lindsay runs to hug his friend as if they were brothers. But Lind doesn't seem so thrilled with the visit and wants to know the reason for the trip. Before Yu can explain properly, Sushiel pulls him aside to introduce him to the residents, announcing to everyone that he's a famous star, Moni. Then, Ewan nudges Lindsay, saying that if he had stayed at the company, he would have many fans. Lindy gets annoyed and makes it clear that he's fine the way he is. Yue realizes that Sushiel adores him and takes advantage of the admiration by ordering food. Xiao happily goes to get it, sticking close to him, taking care of him as if he were a prince. And Lindsay starts to feel jealous. Because since Yu arrived, Xiao treats Lindsay even worse, with rudeness, provocation, and indifference. Xiao also mentions that she'll appear in Yue's video, but Lindsay interferes and insists on filming with his friend, keeping Yue away from Su Xiao. That night, Yue talks to Lindsay and tries to understand his plans and if he's still upset. According to Lindsay, he's feeling better, but he's uncomfortable sharing the room. Yue insists and says he won't leave until Lindsay agrees to return to the city. Lindsay remains firm in his decision. The next day, Yue decides to give him space, packs his things, and prepares to leave. Before leaving, he gives Sushil gifts and photos, and she is very grateful. Yue also asks Sushil to take good care of Linz. She finds it strange because Lindsay is already an adult, but Yue warns that despite seeming strong on the outside, Lindsay is fragile on the inside and needs support. Sushil doesn't take it seriously at the time, but later thinks about it. Then she opens the laptop and sees that Lindsay's latest search was about a strange medication linked to severe sadness. Xiao investigates like a rookie detective and decides to administer a sadness test, answering according to the symptoms she thinks Lindsay has. The result scares her because everything seems to match. So she starts taking better care of him, bringing him food, trying to please him, being more attentive. Linz notices the change and tries to understand, but Xiao doesn't say it directly. She tells her friends that Lindsay might be going through something emotionally difficult, and the group decides to band together to cheer him up. At school, Lindsay finds thoughtful gifts on his desk as if it were his birthday. Xiao thinks he'll be happy, but he shows no interest and makes it clear that he doesn't want those things. He just wants to be alone. This makes Xiao believe even more that the situation is serious. She calls her uncle and says, terrified, that Linz might be in danger and could end up making a bad choice against himself or Wana. The uncle ignores her, says he's also having a bad time, and hangs up. When Lindsay starts arriving late, Sushil gets nervous and asks her colleagues where he went. F says he went up to the penthouse to be alone. Sushil panics and runs there, thinking something bad might happen. Then Lindsay is surprised by her appearance, and she acts like his personal bodyguard, trying to save him. She doesn't reveal that she took the test, but her cell phone falls, and when Lindy picks it up, he sees the test she was filling out about him. Lindy understands the misunderstanding. She thinks he's deep in sadness, and he decides to take advantage of that. He pretends to be tired, without energy, and unmotivated, just so she continues to treat him like a king. Xiao follows orders flawlessly, delivering everything promptly. Lindsay is even overjoyed with the privilege and turns Sushil into a personal assistant. And it doesn't stop there. He gets her friends on his care schedule too. They bring him food, help him cheat on tests, and stay with him all the time, like 24-hour watch. When Sushil isn't around, Fang and Nianu accompany Linz home to keep an eye on him. In time, Lindsay begins to feel increasingly suffocated, especially when Fang and Nianu start sleeping in his room as if they were low-budget security guards. One night, Lindsay sneaks out. Xiao wakes up, can't find him, and panics. She wakes Fang and Nian and tells them to find Linz quickly, fearing he might do something bad. The group runs through the village searching for him as if it were an urgent mission. Meanwhile, Linz is just enjoying a peaceful walk listening to good music in I Just Want Peace mode. But Sushil grabs the village microphone and announces to everyone that Linz has disappeared and needs to be found immediately. The entire village goes out to search as if it were a rescue operation. Lindsay is shocked by the commotion. Suddenly, a crowd rushes towards him. He gets scared and tries to run away, but the crowd catches up with him, holds him, and takes him back home amidst the chaos. When he arrives, Sushil goes to check if he's alright. Linz is inwardly furious about the situation, but he can't even explain himself properly amidst all the confusion. After Sushil calms things down, she keeps Lindsay in his room. When the residents leave, Lindsay finally demands an explanation and says he wasn't trying to do anything against himself. He just went for a walk. Sushil feels very guilty and sincerely apologizes. She explains that she thought he was going through something difficult and only wanted to help. Lindsay softens and forgives her, but says he's decided to travel, that he'll return to the city, and that she won't be able to stop him. After everything, Lindsay goes up to the penthouse to think. Then she's uncle appears in his improvised philosopher mode, asking if Lindsay is angry with Sushil or about something deeper. Lindsay says he's already forgiven her. The uncle mentions hearing rumors that Lindy is leaving, and Lindy confirms he wants to travel. The uncle says Sushiel did all that because she was genuinely worried. He makes it clear that they like Lindy and want him to stay, but that in the end he should do what he thinks is right, and asks him to reconsider. The next morning, Lindy wakes up to another surprise. Sushiel is on the village microphone, publicly apologizing for everything she did to him. She begs forgiveness and promises that if he stays, she will never again do anything without being honest and without asking permission first. This touches Lindy. He changes his mind and decides to stay, at least for now, especially since his exams are coming up. From then on, Lindy starts to feel responsible again. He works diligently at the shop and the business starts to make a lot of money. After school, they eat there. Sushiel asks for news, and Lindy tells her that he wrote a song, sold it, and received payment as a real composer. He says he wants to go to the city to buy some things and meet the person who bought the song and asks Sushiel to go along. But Sushiel refuses immediately. She says she hates the city and won't even go near it. Linz finds this strange and wants to understand why, so he asks her friends. Fang tells an absurd story saying that she saw an extraterrestrial when she was little. But Jin cuts him off and explains the real reason. Jin says that the last time Sushiel traveled with her grandmother never returned, and when she traveled with her parents, their fate was also tragically sealed. Sushiel was the only one who survived. Since then, she has developed a strong phobia of the city because, in her mind, whenever she goes, something terrible happens. Lindsay feels very sorry for her and decides to try to help her fix these bad memories as if he were an improvised therapist. He talks to Sushiel's uncle and says he wants to convince her to go so that her next experience in the city will be good. The uncle says he's tried thousands of times, but she's stubborn and never agreed. Even so, Linz and his uncle hatch a plan to take her while she sleeps. The next day, Xiao wakes up in the car, confused and desperate, not understanding where they're going. Linz remains firm in his decision to take her to the city. When they arrive, she collapses, overcome with fear that something bad will happen to her or to him. Linz doesn't let her return to the village and insists she has to face the city this time. Little by little, he begins to guide her through the city, helping her adjust. He takes her to meet the person who bought the music, resolves necessary matters, and to try and cheer her up takes her to an amusement park. But Xiao is terrified of heights and spends the whole time screaming, turning the outing into a disaster. With the mood lighter, he walks her through the streets and shows her that the city can also be beautiful. Gradually, Xiao begins to truly like the place. When Lindsay notices she's feeling better, they return to the village. As soon as they arrive, Shikoil announces that the teacher has said the exams are approaching and that now is the time to study seriously without messing around. The group agrees to prepare. Xiao tries to study, but can't. She's completely lost in that way. That makes you want to close your notebook and pretend you never saw it. When Lindsay finds out, he decides to help her. He starts explaining, thinking it was just difficulty with math, but soon realizes she's bad at all subjects. She really knows almost nothing. So Lindsay starts from scratch, teaching step by step with patience. Little by little, Shihyao finally begins to understand a bit. In gratitude, she becomes his assistant, doing everything he asks without complaining, as if she were receiving an emotional salary. Lindsay is happy inside, because they are getting closer and becoming real friends. But he's afraid to admit that he feels something romantic for her. One day, while studying, Lindsay gets tired and falls asleep right there. Sushiel also notices that he never takes off his earpiece. Sushiel becomes incredibly curious, wondering what kind of music someone listens to even while sleeping. She gets closer, carefully checks the earpiece and freezes. What's playing isn't just any song, it's an old recording with her voice as a child, making a sweet promise to her childhood friend, Xiao, saying she'll marry him when they grow up. And then comes the turning point that clicks in her head. Lindsay and Xiao are the same person. They were childhood friends. Xiao truly did like him back then, and she held that promise closely in her heart even without comprehending the full extent of its meaning. But life separated them. Linzas's father got a better job opportunity. He moved away from the village with his mother, and the two lost contact. And now, years later, fate has brought them together again, but in the most chaotic way possible, with fighting, shouting, and bickering as its calling card. Xiao is speechless, dying of embarrassment, her face burning with discomfort. And worse, she realizes that Lindsay knew who she was all this time and still pretended not to know. In other words, he had a plot up his sleeve and she was the one walking in the dark. Coincidentally, Lindsay wakes up and sees his earpiece out of place. He panics because he realizes she heard him. There's this awkward silent tension, both frozen, each trying to act normal but unable to. And in the end, they do what any human being would do in a moment like that. They run away from each other as if running away would solve the shame. Shai locks herself in a room and runs to call Jin. Because if there's one thing that works in K-dramas, it's venting to the right friend. She tells her everything from beginning to end. Jin is shocked and quickly connects the dots, realizing that this childhood friend was precisely the boy Sushial couldn't forget. Sushial tries to play detached and insists she doesn't like him anymore, as if repeating it would automatically become true. John doesn't buy it for a second and pushes her back to reality, saying it's obvious there are still feelings there and that this awkward atmosphere will only end when someone is honest. Sushial feels insecure, afraid to confess her feelings, and that Linz might suddenly become interested in another girl. She even throws the excuse of studying on the table, because when your heart aches, you become an expert at finding something to occupy yourself with. So the two make a deal. If Sushial gets a good grade on her next exam, she'll find the courage to confess to Lindsay that same day. From then on, Sushial becomes a study machine. She works so hard that she starts to look like someone who lives on coffee and stubbornness. But she holds on tight because now she has a goal, drama, and a reason. The long-awaited 6-month break arrives, and Sushial and Lindsay decide to celebrate together. Just as they're leaving, Yu appears in front of them, accompanied by Yuhan, who is clearly interested in Linsar Nakawan. Their presence changes the atmosphere, as if someone pressed the chaos button. Sushial recognizes Yu immediately and gets excited because he's famous and she's a fan. But Lindsay doesn't receive this visit with the same enthusiasm. He wants to know why Yue ended up there. Yue explains that he came because of the break in a casual way, and then leaves with Sushial, pulling her close. Meanwhile, Yuhan tries to get closer to Lindsay, but he treats her coldly and distantly, as if his heart is on airplane mode. She's obviously bothered, but he doesn't change. Sushial calls the rest of the group, and they decide to all leave together since Yu is there. Ahan continues trying to create space with Lindsay, but he continues acting the same way, dry, closed off, and not giving her an opening. That's when Jin suggests they go to the village's haunted house famous for supposedly granting the wishes of those who enter. They split into groups, and by chance, Lindsay ends up going with Sushial. The two spend time together in that atmosphere of suspense and nervous laughter, with that kind of closeness that makes everything more intense, even when no one says anything. When the day ends, Sushial returns home and gets another shock. The teacher is waiting for her. Sushial finds it strange and immediately thinks the test results came out of nowhere, but she quickly realizes the real reason. The teacher is interested in her uncle. Sushial is shocked and questions the teacher's choice with such brutal honesty that she almost becomes a historical landmark of the village. The uncle is offended, of course, and the situation turns into a comical scene because Sushial goes into unfiltered matchmaker mode, practically pushing the two to go and be happy, as if she were solving a logistical problem. Then Yue takes advantage of the moment to talk to Linz privately. Nadine goes along in professional curiosity mode, because half-truths don't sustain a friendship, nisbandane. IU hands over a sort of invitation, explaining that an entertainment program is coming soon. He says that if Linz participates, he can become a real idol, leave that old company that didn't value him, get better treatment, grow in his career, travel, and even reach a huge level as a singer. Linz is torn. On one side, his life's dream, music, the stage, a real chance. On the other, the peace of the village, his friends, and Sushial, who has become the silent center of it all. He doesn't know what to choose, and this indecision begins to weigh on him. The next day, Jan tries to convince Lin again, saying it's a great opportunity. He admits he's comfortable in the village, but says he'll think about it. Ohan opens up and admits she likes him, but Linz makes it clear he doesn't feel the same because he likes someone else. He even expects her to make a scene, but she surprises him and says she already knew his heart was set on Sumial and even advises him to confess before it's too late. Later, Yuhan talks to Yu and they both decide to return to the city. Before leaving, Yuan speaks to Suxiao in a somewhat enigmatic way, warning her that there are people close to her who like her but don't know how to express themselves properly. Lindsay gets nervous inside, thinking she's gonna reveal everything, but she assures him she'll stay quiet and let him speak when he has the courage. When the group arrives home, there's another emotional bombshell, but this time it's adult life. The village chief is there, demanding money from Xiao's uncle because he borrowed money and didn't pay it back. They even suggest selling the car or the shop to pay the debt. Suxiao is furious. She refuses to lose the shop her grandmother left her, nor the car they use for work. She takes the keys, locks everything up, and kicks her uncle out of the house, officially leaving him without direction because nobody wants to take him in. Every time he tries to get close, Grandma Kim feels sorry for him and lets him stay at her house, gives him food, and even mentions that there's a strange guy lurking around the streets. She offers him lemonade, but he drinks too much and gets dizzy. Lindsay sees the situation and is moved, so he decides to help his uncle get back into the house through the back entrance, as if it were a 5th grade secret operation. But the next morning, Suxiao finds out and decides to teach him a serious lesson. She takes his personal belongings and throws them outside to make it clear that he won't be able to walk in, as if nothing happened. She even decides to sleep in the shop to prevent him from approaching the property. Lindsay tries to make her see her uncle's side, saying that he deserves compassion and that he used the money in the store when they were struggling financially. But Suxiao doesn't budge. She firmly insists that she won't sell anything her grandmother left her. Lin loses his patience and calls her selfish, saying that she only thinks about herself and that her uncle might end up abandoned. Suxiao gets angry, tells him to stop, and the two have a heated argument, the kind of fight that sounds like a couple who already have 2 bills to pay together, even though they don't. Her friends try to calm her down, saying that her uncle isn't a threat, but she gets stressed even with them and cuts off contact in total stubbornness. But then a truly dangerous situation occurs. Suxiao hears a noise outside the store. When she goes to investigate, she finds that strange guy trying to cause a lot of damage to the store, wanting to destroy everything. She runs to stop him, but he attacks her, and the scene becomes a tense moment. Lindsay appears and runs to help. In the midst of the confusion, the uncle appears and steps in front, taking the impact in their place, protecting both Lindsay and Xiao. In the end, the man is restrained and taken away by the village authorities, and the chief personally thanks the uncle for what he did. Suxiao is overcome with guilt. She realizes that even with all his flaws, her uncle was willing to risk everything for her. So she decides to forgive him and truly support him. The uncle is happy and promises to make up for it, working hard to rebuild their lives. They decide to sell the shop and pay off their debts. And Suxiao, surprisingly, isn't stuck on the loss of the business. For her, what matters is having her uncle and Linza around. They go back to living together as before. That somewhat chaotic but united family night. However, calmer now, Suxiao calls Feng and Yanu to help with a vegetable delivery ayam. But then another problem arises. Jun's little brother appears saying he needs to talk to Nyanu urgently. Nyanu discovers that someone wants to propose to Jin. He's shocked because he truly likes her. Then Nyanu from Zaba asks Lindsay and Suxiao for help, and they both tell him the obvious, which hurts. He needs to confess his feelings quickly before losing her. Nyanu panics because he doesn't know how to do it, and that's when the most improvised training in the world begins. Xiao and Lindsay try to teach him how to act, speak, breathe, and not freeze up. But in the middle of this charade, Lindsay ends up getting too close to Xiao as she gets nervous because now she knows about their past and her heart isn't cooperating. They quickly cut the tension and refocus, teaching Nyanu how to say memorable things. When Nyanu sees Jin with her suitor, he follows her, arrives at her house, pulls her by the hand, and takes her to the field. There, he tries to pour everything out and confesses his feelings in the most desperate way possible. Jin says she doesn't like him that way, and Neil breaks down crying as if the world has shut down. At the same time, Suxiao discovers that someone created an online account and posted old childhood photos of her. She thinks it's someone trying to humiliate her, but is surprised to find out it was Lin's. She recognizes some numbers used in the account name and connects the dots. She confronts him without understanding why and gets very angry, leaving furiously. Lin tries to explain, but she doesn't listen at that moment. Lin goes to check on Nu and finds him devastated. Nyanilio says everything is ruined and blames Lindsay and Suxiao for the declaration going wrong as if they were culprits without aim. Lindsay tries to console him and admits that he also fought with Suxiao and that his life has become a mess. Fang mocks him, saying that life without girls is more peaceful, as if he were a sage of chaos. But Lindsay doesn't give up. He decides to tell Xiao the truth. He created the account to keep their precious memories as an emotional archive. Meanwhile, Sushiel, completely distracted, opens the account and starts looking at the photos. She even likes one without thinking much, as if she were evaluating her own past. When Lindsay realizes she saw it, he takes the opportunity to calmly apologize and make it clear that he didn't mean to provoke her, only to protect those memories. When Sushiel understands, she forgives him, and they make up. They talk about the account, and Lindsay sends her a song he was composing. Sushiel listens and is enchanted. Her heart races and she realizes she still likes him, but she's afraid to open up, to be rejected and broken inside. So she starts avoiding the subject, even though she loves his presence. But Lindsay keeps trying to get closer until he decides to ask her out on a date. Susha gets all dressed up, puts on a nice outfit, and appears different than usual because she usually dresses in a more practical way. He takes her to the countryside, and the two stay there listening to music, enjoying their time together, growing closer in an atmosphere that makes it seem like the whole world has turned off its sound. But when they return, sad news arrives. Grandma Kin has passed away. Everyone is shaken and participates in the farewell. Each one deals with it in their own way. Nyanu stays by Jean's side, supporting her. Days pass, and Jean begins to develop feelings for Nyanu. She says she will give him a chance after they graduate and go to university. Nyanu is happy in a way that makes anyone without a romance angry, because the boy regains hope. Linz focuses heavily on studying and composing, determined to become a singer. And then he receives a message from his father saying he will visit him in the village. Lindsay is happy, but his father arrives with pressure. He needs to leave the village and return to the city. Lindsay doesn't accept easily. He says he's happy there, but his father insists and even threatens to cut ties if he doesn't go. Xiao gets furious and makes it clear she doesn't want him to leave. Her uncle tries to calm her down, but she argues too because when Sushiel goes into storm mode, nobody can stop her. Xiao talks to Lindsay's father and defends him, saying he's intelligent, loves music, and doesn't need to leave the village. She promises to help him study and get good grades, as if she were going to become his private tutor, just to keep him close. The father realizes she truly cares for him and wants to protect him, but says he's trying his best. He wants to see Lindsay grow up, get into a good university, and have a great future. He promises that after a year, when Lindsay finishes his studies and achieves what he needs, he will bring him back to the village. Xiao begins to believe him and accepts, even though it hurts. The next day, the father and Lindsay go out to talk alone. The father says he's afraid for his son and wants to see him succeed, and even gives Sushiel and the uncle money to reopen the shop and live more securely. Xiao talks to Lindsay and tells him that he won't have an easy life anymore, because he'll have to study and help with work. Even so, she insists he should go and promises to wait. She cries a lot because she doesn't want to, but understands that it might be important to him. After some deliveries, she goes to look for Lindsay and discovers that he's already left with his father. She's devastated, but then Lindsay appears and reveals it was a prank just to see her reaction. Sushiel gets furious and gives her a real scolding because she almost had a nervous breakdown. Lindsay apologizes and takes her on one last date. When he returns, he finds his father preparing dinner. Lindsay gathers his friends and eats them as if it were the official farewell. He asks them to take care of Sushiel while he's away because she's innocent and easily swayed. Everyone promises to take care of her. Later, Lindsay meets Sushiel again, plays the songs he wrote inspired by her for her, and finally puts his heart on the table, making it clear that he likes her. Xiao admits she likes him too. He explains he's going on a trip with his father. Xiao gives him a small gift and asks him not to forget her. Lindsay promises he'll call her often, just to annoy her and maintain his presence in his own way. He encourages her to study, saying he believes she can get into a good university. The next day, Lindsay packs his things and leaves. Sushiel cries at the farewell, and Lindsay also wanted to stay, but he leaves. After he leaves, Sushiel decides she's going to get the best grades, and that when she does, Lindsay will come back and they'll be together. The group supports her. Even the teacher promises to help her revise. Time passes, the exams arrive, and Sushiel does very well, studying at an absurd level. But after 2 months, Lindsay stops texting. Sushiel gets sad and starts thinking he might have met someone else, Kashina. Jin calms her down and says he must have a reason, because true feelings don't just disappear like that. In the end, they graduate and get into good universities. Neonu confesses his feelings to Jin again in front of everyone, and this time she accepts, because they're going to the same university. Xiao is happy for them, but Mrs. Lindsay there. They celebrate, and later decide to do something crazy. They enter the school at night, jump the wall, and start playing in the hallways and classrooms as if they wanted to say goodbye to that phase in the most unforgettable way possible. But they hear a noise and run away terrified. Nianu runs with Jin, and Fang runs with Sushiao. But Sushiao sees a strange light coming from a room. She approaches and finds the place full of lights and photos of her and her friends. She thinks it was Fang, but then she sees someone standing there. It's Lindsay. He appears with a surprise prepared to celebrate her birthday and congratulate her on getting into the university she wanted. Sushiao can't believe it and tries to understand how he knew the date. She discovers that he always knew, and that he planned everything with the help of his friends. She also questions why he disappeared for 2 months without sending anything. Lindy explains that it was because of his father's demands and that he needed to focus entirely on his studies. He says he achieved his goal and got into the university he wanted. And now, with that resolved, it's time to pursue his dream. He reaffirms his feelings for her and makes it clear that he wants to be officially with her, promising that from now on, he won't abandon her and that they will face whatever comes their way together. The friends celebrate, and the whole group promises to remain united as friends forever, in the way only K-dramas can leave a lasting impression. And so the story closes its cycle. Two people who have been searching for each other since childhood end up reuniting at the right time, in the most unlikely place amidst shyness, laughter, songs, and promises that finally make sense.